Andrew, I wanted to take a moment and say happy birthday to you, and can't think of a better gift to give you than a little bit of insight as to what is my favorite type of lock cylinder, at least nowadays. So this is a lock cylinder, and I wanted to teach you about this on your birthday. So this is what's called a Mortise cylinder, and very common piece of equipment. You'll find it in many commercial settings. You rarely see it in residential settings unless the door has a mortise lock on it, and you'll know that by its telltale sign of having a very large cutout in the edge of the door, 7-inch, commonly 8-inch. And generally with mortise locks, you'll have a very ornate trim on the outside. It'll be excessively large. It may have a grip handle and a thumb piece. It will certainly always have a cylinder on the outside. Now, what's neat about this Mortise cylinder is that, and by the way, it says the word Russwin on it, and then Hart on the face of the cylinder, and it has this little UL symbol on it. Now, taking those in order, Russell and Irwin were the two gentlemen who started the Russell and Irwin hardware company in about 1857 or so. And through a series of evolutions and mergers, the company became Russell and Irwin, Russell and Irwin, Russwin. That's where the name came from, so Russwin. They've been in business for about 160 years, something in that range, a very long time. Now, Hart was a company that ended up owning Russwin and other companies for a while. And under the Hart name, they created a series of high-security cylinders. And this cylinder is high security because of the way in which it's manufactured. And it's manufactured in such a way to defeat typical sorts of attacks that you would find on common cylinders, such as picking or impressioning, two very common ways. This cylinder, however, goes a step beyond that. And that little UL symbol. Now, UL stands for Underwriters Laboratory. And you can look up UL, and they are actually very close to your house. They're in Northbrook, and they may only be about 3-4 miles away from you. Okay, let's see if we can get the camera to focus on our cylinder face here. It says UL. So if you were to look at the bottom of your toaster, it's going to say UL on it somewhere. If you were to look at anything electrical, it will be tested by UL. This hasn't been tested by UL in the sense of it's okay to be plugged in because it's obviously not electrical. But in the case of a cylinder where it's stamped UL, that means that this cylinder is now constructed in such a way to make it very resistant to attack. If I were to try to drill into that cylinder, it has special pieces of hardened steel in there to prevent me from doing so. Along with other facets of the way it's constructed, make it highly impervious to physical attack. Hammering on it, putting a wrench on it, drilling into it, manipulating it, trying to pick it open. And the standard that you could look up is called UL 437. UL 437 is what governs the high security ratings that a cylinder may apply to be compatible with or compliant with. And this cylinder was tested and found to be compliant with all of the requirements of UL 437. And basically what the test is, there's a person who comes up to the cylinder and they try to drill into it for 10 minutes. And then they try to wrench it off the door for 10 minutes. And they try to shim it open for 10 minutes. And if the cylinder passes all those tests without giving up, without opening, then it's UL. It's UL listed, which means it's met the requirements of UL 437. Now, this is the key that operates it. We know that it's high security because of the shape of the bow. That's called the bow of the key, okay? The part you put your hand on, that's called the bow, okay? Rhymes with toe, B-O-W. Not bow, but bow. Rhymes with toe. So this key has cuts like you would normally see. However, these cuts, they're unusual. So if you have a regular house key that you can look at, if you look at those cuts, what you may be able to perceive on there is those cuts are actually, a key cutting machine will cut straight down, but a high security Hart, the cuts are actually skewed, S-K-E-W, skew. They're skewed at 20 degrees from center, either to left of center or to right of center. So when the key machine cuts the key, the machine is actually skewed one way or the other. The different angles permit the cylinder to be substantially more resistant to duplication, because now the problem is if you're going to try to duplicate this key or manipulate the key or the cylinder, you need all these special parts that you can't get your hands on. So it's a really funny cut. Now what I was holding underneath here under my finger was these odd little cuts that are in the bottom of the key. Those are super important to be there, and in fact without these odd little teeth the key would not work, because in a regular lock cylinder, and I believe I said to you I would teach you how to key lock someday, you and Paul, and of course Pickles. In a regular pin cylinder, you have three components. Okay? You have a spring, you have a driver pin, and then a bottom pin. Okay? So the reason that this key has those notches in it is because in our high security version, our pins are actually interlocked together. So there's an attack that's called, the attack is called, if you're going to attack the cylinder, means if you're going to try to break into it, it's called shimming or impressioning or picking. This cylinder is not going to succumb to those attacks because the pins are interlocked. So in our high security, they're actually interlocked here. Okay? So that when you put the pins into the cylinder, you have to lock them together and then drop them down into each chamber. So what happens is when the key turns, you have to have room in the root of the key to allow this little T feature from the top pin to be able to, when the cylinder turns 180 degree, to be able to clear those little T features on the bottom of the driver pins or the top pins. That makes it substantially more resistant to attack as well, in the sense that you can't stick something between the pins to try to get the lock to open. You can't. It's impossible to do that. So it thoroughly defeats that attack, making it very high security. Now, unfortunately, they don't make these cylinders anymore and have not for probably 20 years because it turns out that this angle cut or the skew is a copy of someone else who had been doing it since the 1970s. That company is called Medico, Mechanical Development Company. Mechanical Development Company. Medico. Okay? Why they do that? They're just being funny. So Medico was doing that skew cuts in the 1970s. The patent was about 1968, I think. Medico has left, center, and right skew. They have left and right skew and a center cut. Hart has only left and right. So Medico sued Hart and said, "Ho, that's our technology." Medico won that lawsuit. So the Hart cylinder can no longer be manufactured because it infringed on that patent technology. But in the sense of giving you a cylinder that is highly more resistant to common attack that a locksmith might engage to get the, or someone might engage to get the cylinder open, it's incredibly resistant to that. Now, I believe the person's name who invented this, his name is Surko, Walter Surko, S-U-R-K-O. And what's really cool, if you look into his patent or other patents of him and other people who have patented lock cylinders, is that you quickly realize that the people who were doing this work were highly intelligent. And it's like playing someone in chess. You really get to know that person when you play them in chess, because you really learn what's in their brain, what's in their mind. And when you look at patents of people who have invented in their mind this sort of technology, it's really fascinating. And I thought that being able to tip you in or clue you in as to something so cool such as this would not only be interesting to you, but would intrigue you maybe to do perhaps research on other cylinders, but also to allow you to look into ways that you might reinvent the things that are around us every day. This type of technology was invented by the Egyptians 4,000 years ago. It wasn't until about 1850 that technology was reinvented into the modern cylinder that we all use every day. The lock on your house, the Egyptians came up with that. And it was a man by the name of Linus Yale Jr. who took that idea and then improved it. And in 1850 or so, 170 years later, we're still using his technology. The Hart is nothing other than a natural evolution of that, but the principle is the same. The principle being these pin tumblers, these pieces of round metal that fit inside of there. Okay. Now, I hope that you're able to do some research on this or anything else, and I look forward to seeing you. I will be calling you soon. I'll probably try to call you later today, and tell your mom if she has a number with an 844 area code. It's me. I'm not looking to see if she needs a extension on her dishwasher warranty to answer if when that number rings. So I'll talk to you soon.